Hello, my name is Michael Parker, and welcome to Antidote, the show that introduces you to the people that you need to know and the stories you need to hear in the 21st century. Today we're speaking with Los Angeles-based author Dave McGowan. Dave, your book, Weird Seeds Inside the Canyon. Laurel Canyon, Covert Ops, and the Dark Heart of the Hippie Dream. The 1960s is possibly the most written about decade of all time. And yet you managed to find fertile ground discussing Laurel Canyon. Laurel Canyon is this magical place that I think the people who have heard of it probably have the same visions that I did growing up, reading Rolling Stone, rock stars and parties and actors and swimming pools. Yet you depict it on the cover as a wash in blood. So there were many revelations to me in this book, so let's start with the primary revelation, which was Lookout Mountain Laboratories. Tell us about that.
Lookout Mountain Laboratories was a top secret U.S. Air Force installation nestled up in Laurel Canyon, the existence of which remained unknown until fairly recently, even within the conspiracy community. Very few people seem to be aware of the existence of this facility, which remained operational at least through 1969 officially, and according to other sources, considerably beyond that, but certainly through 1969 during the peak years of the Laurel Canyon music scene, which was, a very curious discovery, to say the least, to find that nestled right in the middle of this bucolic hippie commune, so to speak, was a highly classified military establishment that was in full operation.
When was that built?
It was built World War II years, I believe, initially as a anti-aircraft installation to protect Los Angeles against a possible aerial attack during World War II, and then it morphed into a film studio at some point, and was said to be the world's most complete self-contained film studio.
But he also had a very conspicuous father. Tell us a little bit about Jim and his father and their place in that strange saga.
Yeah, Jim was certainly a larger-than-life figure, to this day, very, very iconic figure. The curious thing about him is that his father was actually a very high-ranking Navy admiral, which that part was known prior to my work on this book, but what I discovered, which had not been previously reported, is that not just was he a Navy admiral, but he just happened to be the Navy admiral who oversaw the Gulf of Tonkin incident. He was the commanding officer of the ships involved in that notorious incident, which of course led immediately to the passage of the Tonkin Gulf Resolution, and then to the full-scale involvement of ground troops in Vietnam, and ultimately the deaths of some 60,000 Americans and countless millions of Vietnamese and Laotian and Cambodian people, all of which was a direct result of this so-called Tonkin Gulf incident, which, Jim Morrison's father was a key figure, to say the least, in orchestrating that whole incident that quickly resulted in the U.S. being, engulfed in a very, very bloody quagmire over there. And that happened just like within a year or so of the sun emerging on the Laurel Canyon Sunset Strip scene as this larger-than-life icon of the anti-war, peace movement crowd. So there was a very curious juxtaposition there, to say the least, that you have the father sailing off to, help choreograph this incident that drug America into this bloody quagmire, and then the son almost simultaneously emerging on the scene as this larger-than-life icon of the anti-war crowd.
What were they shooting? What was the point?
Well, the main purpose, according to various sources, was to process the raw film stock from the early atomic bomb tests, the nuclear weapons tests. But that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because, like I say, this was a fully operational film studio that capable of doing everything in-house. They had, you know, every animation department, editing facilities, film vaults, you know, sound stages, everything to make a film from soup to nuts. And, you know, to process raw film stock, all you really need is a darkroom. Could have been anywhere. You know, there was no need to fly that film all the way, you know, to this remote outpost in Laurel Canyon that was a fully functioning film studio. So obviously there was a lot more going on there than what has been acknowledged. You know, whether we'll ever know the full scope of what, you know, what was being done at this facility is, you know, an open question. Yeah, some real heavyweights from Hollywood, you know, performers like Marilyn Monroe, John Wayne, as you mentioned, I think Jimmy Stewart, and very heavyweight filmmakers, like I think John Ford and I don't know, a couple others. Were involved. They had security clearance to work in this facility, and yet no one seems to know exactly what they did there, and they remained remarkably closed-lipped about it. You know, I mean, pretty much all of them, as far as I know, went to their deaths without ever even mentioning the existence of this facility, let alone that they had any association with it. So it was a very well-kept secret for a very long time.
Well, this is the perfect time for the entrance of Charlie Manson.
Charlie Manson.
Now, this guy shows up from Northern California, right?
Well, he had been doing time in Terminal Island in San Pedro, and then when he was released, he first went to San Francisco and made the scene up there, and then, yeah, took his little magic bus and some of his followers and migrated down to LA, and very quickly managed to integrate himself into the scene and be accepted by a lot of these people, although after the arrest, they just couldn't distance themselves quickly enough from him. But, you know, there are quotes in the book from the era of people who just were singing his praises left and right. I mean, Neil Young just talked about him like he was, you know, the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you know, Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys was a huge fan and
provided shelter.
Yeah, and the Mamas and the Papas were very close. Both John Phillips and Mama Cass were very closely connected, so close that they were on the initial witness list to be called as witnesses at the Manson trials, but were never called and managed to keep their names out of the press for the most part. So most people don't even realize that they were so close. They were close enough that they were actually included as witnesses. So yeah, he was very close to, as were other members of his family, of the Manson family. Bobby Beausoleil, one of his, you know, top lieutenants.
Played in Love, right?
Yeah, he was actually one of the rhythm guitarists for what would become Love. They were Grassroots at the time, and then they changed their name to Love. And right behind us here, and yeah, he was one of the original. There were two rhythm guitarists initially, Brian McLean and Bobby Beausoleil, and Bobby ended up getting cut in favor of a guy whose name I already forgot, even though I just said it. But one of the main reasons that he was cut in favor of McLean, Brian McLean, is because Brian McLean had a very close relationship with Vito Pellicas and the Pellicas crew, and so the band realized that they could use them to draw the crowds and build a name for themselves.
There you go.
So otherwise, Bobby Beausoleil might have stuck with them and you know, carried on as a member of the band. So. Yeah, the Manson family was very, very tightly integrated into that whole musical scene, and accepted as a peer, accepted as a fellow singer. I mean, Dennis Wilson, the Beach Boys stole one of his songs and retitled it and released it. Who was it? Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, recorded the Downward Spiral in the Death House because he wanted to get the right vibe for the record or something.
Dave, I'm not really down with serial killers. The Wonderland murders.
The Wonderland murders.
Also in Laurel Canyon.
Right in Laurel Canyon. Yeah, the Manson murders actually occurred in Benedict Canyon, but all of the principals, both victims and perpetrators, were well known on the Laurel Canyon scene. And the Wonderland murders, which is the other probably the two most notorious to this day mass murders in the history of the city were the Manson murders and the Wonderland murders. And the Wonderland murders were actually committed right in Laurel Canyon at the near the top of Lookout Mountain on Wonderland Drive. And the house is still in existence to this day. You can still drive by and look at it. It's unchanged, which is rather remarkable because usually those kind of houses tend to be torn down and you know, nobody wants to buy them or live in them. Like the Manson death house in Benedict Canyon was mowed down, and now there's this huge like Mediterranean villa there. Have you seen it? It's
I'm not sure.
eyesore. But the Wonderland death house still exists to this day. And yeah, both two very, very bloody mass murders, to say the least. Both of them involved 5 victims. All 5 died in the Manson killings, and one of the 5 survived the Wonderland bludgeonings. But yeah, those took place right in Laurel Canyon. To dealers who were selling to, like one of the guys from Three Dog Night, acknowledged in an interview that he had planned to be there that night to pick up his supply, and didn't make it. Luckily for him, perhaps. So yeah, so both of those murders are very, very closely connected to this scene that was supposed to be all about peace, love, and understanding, and flowers in your hair, and yet there's such a bloody back. And those are just the most high-profile deaths. Then there's all the individual, you know, murders and suspicious deaths of people living in the canyon or very closely connected to it.
That perhaps the whole hippie movement was largely created, why?
I believe to undermine the budding anti-war movement, which is, you know, one of the other. You mentioned one of the great misconceptions is that the hippie movement began life in Haight-Ashbury, which is the 99% of the people. If you ask them that, I'm sure that's what they would tell you. That was the birthplace and the sort of spiritual center of the hippie world, and it comes as a shock to a lot of people to find that it actually began a couple of years earlier right here in LA, you know, because that's just not what most people think of when they think of, you know, that era. And the other great misconception is that the hippies were synonymous with the anti-war movement, but that wasn't the case initially. There was a anti-war movement already in existence, primarily on college campuses, that was centered around, you know, these very conservative, well-educated, straight-laced college professors, and they're
People
equally
you might have taken seriously.
Yeah, people that you might have taken seriously, and then suddenly they were replaced with these long-haired, weed-wearing, slogan-spouting, you know, LSD take. These people who everything about them, from their hairstyles, their clothing styles, their lifestyles, their, you know, the free drugs and free sex and the whole lingo that developed around them, just must have seemed, I mean, these people might as well have been from Mars to, you know, people in mainstream America. And I mean, I grew up idolizing them and wishing that I had been born sooner so that I could have been one. But at the same time, I can see how that would be a much less effective face to put on the anti-war movement than what was originally on there. And there are quotes from people who were part of the original movement questioning whether, is this some kind of a government operation? Where are all these hippies coming from all of a sudden? And
well, Dave, we're talking about all these enlistment age young men, lots of drugs, lots of sex, underage girls. A, did any of these guys get drafted? B, did any of them do any time? Because, I mean, all of this is going on in plain view.
Yeah, that's another big clue that this may not have been. I mean, if these people were enemies of the state who were a thorn in the side to authorities and stuff, then the state had vast resources to bring them under control, and it wouldn't even have required like very heavy-handed tactics. There was a draft in place. That's what the whole counterculture was all about, was, you know, opposition to the draft largely. And yet, and most of these people making the scene were draft-age young men. Yes. And yet none of them had their careers in it, not one. Not even like some minor player, like some long-forgotten drummer for the Turtles or something. I mean, I literally could not find a single case of any of the Laurel Canyon musicians who had their careers interrupted by the draft, which is pretty remarkable given the time.
Incredible.
And this was an era when the country had very harsh drug laws, and these people were not only openly using drugs, in some cases they were openly trafficking drugs. Yes. And again, they never got anything more than a slap on the wrist.
The work of David McGowan is really profound. His first book that I read, Programmed to Kill, I've done a few videos putting out some of the information from the book, also from the work of Patrick, has a YouTube channel called LOL Love and Field. I'll put a link in the description to it. He also has a website. I'll probably just link to the website. He's done, like I've said before, hundreds of hours of detailed work from Programmed to Kill, inspired by Programmed to Kill, the book by David McGowan. Before David McGowan passed away a few years ago, at least 5-6 years ago, I'd say, he wrote a book about Laurel Canyon, and that's what you've been watching, the interview that I posted on this video. He was promoting his book, and I think he had a heart attack or some sort of aneurysm or something. Who knows? Don't really want to get into that, but just the information that he puts out, true investigative journalist style, author, stuff that you just do not see anywhere, really. I think a lot of people knew certain things about connections with celebrities and the CIA, but David McGowan, I think he just put it together really well in Programmed to Kill. Programmed to Kill and the Laurel Canyon book kind of coincide, as far as Programmed to Kill was about evidence that he found that was just out there, that anyone could have gotten, tried to put the pieces together, which he did. Was about the connection between serial killers, the United States government, the CIA, high-level politicians in the United States government, powerful groups, special forces, military, psychiatrists. One of the main characters that's always around when you talk about mind control in the military and psyops and everything is Michael Aquino, who was a psychological warfare colonel in the U.S. Army for a long time. So that's what Programmed to Kill was about, that these so-called lone nut serial killers or lone wolf serial killers were working alone, which David McGowan in his book Programmed to Kill shows that that was not the case, that all the profound, famous cases of serial killers, there's tons of evidence that they were working with more people, that they were a part of a group. And like I said, a lot of prestigious people and groups in the United States military, the government, and just a lot of powerful people, a lot of connections. But that just goes to show that the CIA, the psychological warfare departments of the military, the U.S. military, were totally involved. And what better way to brainwash, I want to say, for lack of a better term, or condition the minds of a whole entire nation than to do it through music, movies, all the things that are, in fashion, people want to be like. People see all these rock stars and movie stars having fun, even back in those days, back in the days of Laurel Canyon in the 60s. Young people see that and they want to be like them. So what better way to condition the public than having control of media, as far as, I mean, not just what gets pumped out, but the fashion, the glitz, the glamour, the like cool stuff. They totally created and controlled all of that, even and it exists even today. So that's definitely a perfect way to do it. It's not these fads and these things that are popular in music, and it's not a coincidence. Like, these people don't just come out of nowhere. They're basically created and trained to be what they eventually become to be, either an actor, a singer, dancer, songwriter. They're not writing their own shit. That's definitely coming out of military psychological mind warfare labs and shit. What would be the most effective, thing to condition the mind? It's not going to be some, Lady Gaga sitting down in her bathroom or her fucking bedroom writing lyrics. No, that's not going to happen. So it's definitely a weapon that they've used and that they've perfected over the years, over the decades. And it's definitely a part of our culture, and it's just not an organic thing. It didn't just happen by itself. Everything that they come out with styles of clothes, with conditioning how girls and young girls and women dress, and what men are wearing, as far as like, I mean, look at the whole LGBTQ thing. It's all that is just a big, huge ball of conditioning, and it's just freaking, they created all of that. All of that culture that comes out is not manifested naturally. It's all done scientifically, and it's done psychologically. So pop culture is all manufactured. It's not organic. These people have connections to military, to the royal families, known New World Order families like the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. They're all related. And then if you even take the politicians, they're all related to royals, to Rockefellers, Rothschilds, DuPonts, all these 13 families of the Illuminati. I think, what did they come out with? Something like, it's almost like every single president in the history of the United States is related. I mean, you got Barack Obama and George W. Bush are cousins. Dick Cheney, cousins with Obama. And then you got George W. Bush, his cousins with the Queen of England, who was actually a German. But they all seem to be related, and it even kind of goes down to the musicians and the actors that you see in movies. They're all related. It's all like it's also almost like paths that they can choose, or they're chosen for them. Like, okay, this one's going to be an actor. We're going to train this guy from the time he's a child. We're going to train this girl right here. She's one of our family members, whatever. We're going to train her to be, in blackmail and in sexual blackmail. We're going to train this woman over here, this girl here. She's going to be some sort of assassin. This guy over here, he's going to grow up to be, a political assassin or something like that. So they can just choose like all these different paths for these people when they have them at these facilities that they do these. They're not even experiments. They've broken it down to a science, to where they can manipulate, break down a personality through trauma, and create whatever they want multiple different personalities that can do separate different things. So that it's not like one person is pigeonholed into one job. They can do multiple different things. And they're trained that way since they were young. So so that's basically like what David McGowan's work and his last book that he did about Laurel Canyon. And I kind of went off on more of it because there's a lot of different aspects and a lot of different avenues that this information takes, and it's all pretty much linked together. You just got to know what you're looking at or looking for. But if you get a chance, definitely check out the work of David McGowan. I'll drop a link to Patrick's site for his website. Program to Kill is what it's called. And he, like I said, he basically carries on the work of David McGowan because he passed away. And yeah, I think that'll be about it. All right, peace.